Hayden, you put your arm hand up. And Ella Hay is a graphic designer and I am a textile person. I spent my life working in retail, product development. I lived in Europe. I worked a lot abroad. I came back and worked in fashion retail, and then I trained as an educator. I've been an educator now for 16 years, and that's my background. So if we're going to go through my slides, I'm going to just quickly ask if we could put the, we'll remove as much as we can, and I'm going to experiment and see whether the mover is working. So we are Repair What You Wear, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about fashion and the environment today. I'm going to have a hand moving slides.
It's not working very well at the moment.
There we are. So in 2018, 2019, when we were researching, setting up Repair What You Wear, looking at what was out there to support people with hand mending, just with a needle and thread, we were facing this, that 39% of people said that while they cared about the environment, it never occurred to them that their clothes might have an impact. So we could anticipate change, and we set up Repair What You Wear. And it followed on that The Economist, in its predictions for this coming year, said that one of the areas for growth was going to be repair in business, in fashion. And so we feel pleased that we were ahead of the pack. We also feel that we've moved on, the agenda has moved on considerably, so that now it is being talked about and repair is becoming a very current, discussed issue. Let's look ahead at why it needs to be for climate change. The repair that they're talking about in the business is turning the repair into a functional contributor towards the economy. And if you look at this, which is the circular economy, it's about taking a fibre, turning it into products. Here we've got reduce, which is buy less but better quality. Repair, which we're going to discuss. And then the idea is that you reuse your products in fashion and you downcycle what you can't reuse. We will look at that because, in fact, it's not always possible to to recycle clothing. And that is the big issue. The ideas are running well ahead of the practicalities. This is the greenhouse gas emissions for fashion. We are where it says 2018 at the moment. These are the statistics that are based on the 2022 analysis by McKinsey. So the greenhouse gas emissions from fashion are high. The target that the fashion has signed up to meet 1.5 increase is 1.1. I'm going to get this wrong right now because I've left my statistic million tons of cubic greenhouse gas. The most optimistic we're going to achieve in fashion, if we reduce the emissions, the brands reduce their emissions, if we reduce emissions from upstream operations, and if we encourage sustainable consumer behaviours, is 50% above the 1.5 target. Fashion is a major contributor to climate change. The likes of Tommy Hilfiger, Hugo Boss, and to a degree, fast fashion chains like H&M are buying into change, but the change is not fast enough. There's no engagement with there's no financial incentive unless the customers drive the demand. And in fast fashion, the customers are not currently driving the demand for change. We also have to say that fashion is responsible for 17 to 20% of global water pollution. And what we've done to our carbon emissions and we've done to the anything to do with production is we've exported it over the last 25 years to countries where there isn't the legal compliance required. So, but what we have to look at is where the carbon emissions are coming from. It's true that 70%, or rather I should say, McKinsey's say 70% of the carbon emissions come from in the making of our clothes. That's a very high figure. What it means is that we need to wear the clothes that are being produced. So when I'm talking in schools and the students say, wear something more than once as a contribution towards climate change, we have a long way to go. Let's look at the stats and use. These are reliable figures. So, although, would you mind moving the down a little bit so we can see the figure there? Thank you. We've had to stop at 2015 because it's very difficult to get accurate stats that stack up back to 2000. But if you take the dotted green line, this is clothing utilization, which means how long clothing is lasting, how long it's kept in circulation. And it's fallen by 60% between the year 2000 and 2015. But equally, clothing sales during that 15-year period doubled. And what's happening is that the seasons, when I was working in retail a long time ago now, we had 2 seasons a year. So we had spring, summer, autumn, winter with some fiddles in between. And there's technology has meant that we can increase the amount of, increase the speed that we can produce and deliver garments. Also, we've had price reductions so long as we've exported our products to cheaper manufacturing centres. And therefore, as prices have gone down, volume has been increased. And so we've ended up with a picture that's looking pretty bad. It looked pretty bad in 2015. Now, the average time a garment is worn in fashion is supposed to be between 7 and 10 times. We're talking to the converted here in a climate cafe. So you're going to see them. Of course, I wear my garments a lot more than that. But still, that's the research. So the statistics say, even if you double the time, you reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So all we have to do is we have to wear things longer beyond anything else. We'll look at fibres, and we're going to flick through these quite quickly because fibres are a really important part of fashion clothing. In fact, fashion is thoroughly interesting technically. It's there's a lot of STEM in fashion. And when we think about the creativity in fashion, it's probably only 15% maximum of the fashion business. The rest is all around science and marketing, the technology of making clothes, and functionality. Synthetic fibres make up 68% of clothing. They're strong, cheap, and they can be designed for function, which is really important because a lot of us would be very wet today and the weather is appalling. Were we not wearing synthetic clothing that could prevent the rain from making us even wetter? And they can be engineered to purpose, so it gives them a real function in our lives. Of course, they're oil derivatives. So while we're looking at reducing our fossil fuel reliance, we haven't in fact found a replacement for synthetic clothing. Cotton is a fantastic fibre. It's soft, it's absorbent, and it's biodegradable. So what's not to like about it? It doesn't in fact wear that long. So very often it will be combined. Our socks these days wear a lot longer and they fit our feet a lot better because they're cotton nylon or they're wool nylon. Our jeans fit far more comfortably, don't bag and don't shrink as much because we mix them with elastane. So very rarely in functional clothing do you have, in these natural fibres, do you have the natural fibres on their own. In t-shirts you do, but we need in fact these synthetic fibres of integration. Cellulosic fibres are unexplored really by normal people, should we say. Those in the fashion business know a bit more about them. And if you heard that they were natural polymers, you probably think that was a really good thing. But in fact, what they are is they're the cellulosic elements taken out of tree pulp and mixed with chemicals to turn into fibers. They're extruded through something that's a little bit like a shower head. They're very soft. They have natural drape. They're absorbent. And say if you mix them with cotton, they make much better underwear. They make much better dresses, because cotton dresses, for instance, don't have the weight to drape. And what's been fashionable recently is beautiful, flowery, dotty, whatever dresses for women, shirts, you know, fun things, mostly made in cellulosic fibers. And we'll look at what that means to the environment next. And finally, wool. Only 1% is wool. And wool is the most underrated fiber. We are in the northeast of Scotland. I don't know about you, but I'm wearing many layers of wool at the moment because I can't afford to heat the house. And it's very insulating, it's natural, it's antimicrobial, you don't have to wash it that much. And the good news is that there's new technology which is making the actual fibre softer so that the coarseness of wool that's very often put people off, especially the wool of places like northeast Scotland, will become more acceptable to wear. So that's very good news. There's some little things we need to get rid of in terms of understanding. Polyester is PET, and you can turn plastic bottles into clothing. I mean, I remember that Patagonia were doing this 25 years ago. Rumour had it that they were actually buying in the plastic bottles to turn into the clothing when they ran out of plastic bottles. You're not going to run out of plastic bottles these days, but we have to remember that you can make clothing out of plastic bottles, but you cannot make plastic clothing, polyester clothing, into clothing again. It goes one thing, then it's landfill or it's incineration or whatever the end game is. Cotton has some downsides too. I mean, we don't want to get negative, we'll come up with some positive things, but it's good to know that cotton is has high consumption of global pesticides. When I first started working on this, teaching this 10 years ago, it was actually 23% of global pesticides. So we come down to 16 and 6% of insecticides. But we still have an issue with cotton, which is that it's very water hungry. It's water hungry in production and it's water hungry in growing. So 73% of the land growing cotton is irrigated, and often in countries where they can hardly afford to irrigate because they're short of water themselves. We also have the issue of Uyghur, the Uyghur region of China, where the Muslims there have been indentured labour, and it's 20% of the cotton. And once the cotton goes out in bales into the general cotton market, it's extremely difficult to define. Some businesses like Levi's have absolutely refused to participate and have broken their supply chains, but it's not always possible. Cotton choices briefly.
Oh, I didn't do that.
No, well, maybe I did by accident. Maybe it's back working, but I'll rely on you. If we could go back one.
It's back one on there. I don't understand it.
No, when we go forward.
Yeah, there we are. Good, thank you. I won't touch this. Organic cotton really matters. It's only 1% of the global business at the moment, but one of the things it does is in the rotation of the crops, it enriches the soil, and so that the soil can retain up to 25% more water, so it reduces irrigation. So it is really valuable to have organic cotton. Better cotton is a label that you'll see quite often now in places like Marks and Spencer, so you can actually make a choice. And fair trade cotton, we all know about the fair trade business. It doesn't solve the water or anything else, but it's good and better for the communities. Cellulosic fibres are on the increase. As fashion increases and they're cheap to produce, they make very nice products in high fashion. They're not long lasting. We're cutting down the trees. And when we started in 2020, 1920, I think it was 17 million trees were cut down, and it was only 6 to 7% of the fashion business. Last year, it was 200 million trees, and it was 8 to 9% of the fashion business. So it's a very big problem because a lot of these trees are indigenous and endangered forests. We must be able to do something about that, and we can. So the great thing about cellulosic cloth is that the production can be circular. You can take in wood from a sustainable source, managed forest, and you can have the whole thing in-house and then reuse the chemicals and reuse the water. And there's only 1% of water that goes out clean into the waterway. So it's very good. But you have to look out for the right labels. Things like lyocell, tencel, a few of them here. Just ask the question when you buy. It's really worth it. I think if we can link through to the internet, we might want to just see a factory, take a break. And so if you could kindly press watch video.
Where, oh, yes.
Yes. You're going to meet, I think, I hope.
Well, here we are at Renewcell's brand new commercial scale mill, and it's incredibly exciting because this is the world's first next gen mill for the fashion industry. This mill takes textiles and turns it into pulp that is then made into next season's clothing. In doing so, it helps prevent 200 million trees being logged. So this mill is the start of the next gen revolution.
In the end, we need to take care of the unproduced. We cannot just keep on using more and more of the planet's resources. So once we already produce these fibers, we can use them all over again. So circularity is an important factor in the whole change towards sustainability. And of course, we also want to have, the forest standing. We want to have real forests, and that's also important. But the brand reception has been great, actually. I mean, we're looking at big brands like H&M and Intex, and we also have Levi's, of course, and bestseller, and we're launching with new brands, almost every.
Yes, I thought we'd go that far. If you haven't worked in the textile business, it is quite interesting to see the technicality of the production. Those sheets that were coming off there were the fibre. That's what's then going to be dissolved in the chemicals to make your fibres. So that's the cellulosic sheets that then get dissolved and extruded through into long fibres and then designed around. So if we could watch them, if we could go down to the next one, that'd be great. So basically, this is what we have to do. It's going to be a hard one because fashion and clothing is all about individuality, self-expression, and to a large extent, when people are feeling low, it gives them a bit of a boost. And we all want to be creative, but we're going to have to be creative in ways that are less demanding on the planet. And this is where repair comes into this. So we set up Repair What You Wear because I've been working in communities a while and noticed that alongside teaching, I was teaching, but people just didn't have the wherewithal to use a needle and thread. And without that, they couldn't control their clothing use. And I developed a very simple model, which was core mending. And if people can learn the core mending skills, then they can mend 80%, 70% of your clothing, because you just need to learn in the right way. So one of our key areas is core mending. So with just the skills of threading a needle, backstitch, buttons, hems, and ladder stitch. And we teach it left and right-handed on video forms, plus written instructions, and these instructions are left and right-handed. These instructions can be used out in the communities and in schools. Anyone can understand how to do it. And I've developed a little system with a piece of cloth, 2 pieces of cloth that is now we've taught to many people. So our last sign-in for that, we had over 100 people interested in teaching. So it gets taught at outings, cafes, and in schools and things. The next thing we were asked to do is to engage with school uniforms. Of a research project done 3 years ago now in a county within in the British Isles, 60% of parents said that they would rather throw an item of clothing than attempt to sew on a button. What we've ended up with is a society that's lost skills because hand mending has been removed from education. It was associated with women's work very often, and it was associated with poverty and poverty alleviation. Now we need to reframe textiles within our education system and within our society, because it's not about just sewing. It's about understanding what our clothes are made of, how we can behave in a sustainable way. It's about introducing new job skills. We're going to have to onshore a lot more of our production and things like that. So we need to get people interested in repair, but we also need to make sure that it's not something that scares people. So we have these on our school uniform times, and some of them are really popular. Shoe to cuff. It's sort of, a lot of our videos at the moment are stagnating. We've got to redo our way of communicating on YouTube, but shot up to 15,000 views. You know, we didn't expect that. And then the fast fix trouser seam gets used by a lot of people. Raoul thanked us because the day before his graduation, he mended his only pair of trousers. So it's nice when you get that kind of feedback. We also have left and right-handed basic embroidery on our website because it's important. And blanket stitch has had over 15,000 views too. We had worked with teachers to produce some educational resources and ideas and match them to the UK curriculum. The actual project is not as successful as we would like it to be. I'm just showing some of the pretty brightly coloured things because a lot of it's written. But some teachers have taken it up. And even if only just 1 or 2 do, then that's really important. And they feel supported because there aren't a lot of resources available. Sportswear is almost always synthetic. It's designed for function. And increasingly people who are in the who are doing things in the natural world are conscious of the changes in the natural world, and they want to keep their kit going because they can see that it's important. So we've linked with a lot of people. Well, we're linking with more and more the green runners, reactive, oh yeah, I'm going to forget names. Lots of people who are working towards reducing sportswear consumption. Then we have general men's, and general men's really hopefully provide decent answers to common mending problems. And you can see that what sort of thing they are. We try and make it creative. I think this would be more for where some of them are for people are a little bit more crafty and a bit more into it. But we help people out. We get nice little messages, really nice messages. The mending small holes in knitwear is heading to 380,000 views, and people are mending more than 1 jumper at a time. But we're not a repeat business. You learn the skill, you move on. What we need though is for people to tell people that the resources are there. I've written AI won't be replacing repair skills. My husband said, I think you mean technology. So that's probably misplaced. But nothing will replace hand skills. Each individual mend is different. You can't get a machine. You can get machines to replace zips. You need them, you know, very often. That's important. But hand skills provide fine motor development in children and adults, problem solving. You can read all this: concentration, resilience, financial management, I know that I save for our family and anyone else in my family who mends, we save upward of £400 a year through mending, at least. Sometimes it's hundreds a month. Jackie at the time of year, I can see a nodding head back there. Yeah. And it's future work skills. You know, I've worked with students who are very able academically, but find fine motor really very difficult. But there are people who would find fine motor easy, and it would be an opening to them for a major contribution to society and to future business. So I think I probably overstayed my welcome there, but thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Brilliant, Ros, and of course, don't go anywhere because after the